Hey, shalom, everybody. Shalom. Welcome to the Way Remnant. My name is Jeff Brandon, and we're so glad to have you here tonight. Running just a little bit behind. Already have a lot of folks in the chat room. Want to start off tonight, letting you know Miranda's not going to be here tonight. She's a little under the weather, so we're going to be asking you guys to be in prayer for her. But we're all doing okay. Want to give a shout out to everybody. We've got Anchored to Truth. We've got Kelly Joe. Miranda's in the house. Hey, shalom, Miranda. There we go. She's in the chat and in the bedroom. There we go. All right. Sacred Values. Hallelujah. Good to see you there. Kim Humphreys. All right. Danielle Moglin. There we go. Debbie is here. Carol Bergener. Yep. Tim Cracknell. Wow, we've got a lot of folks here tonight, guys. Carolina Lancaster. Yeah. Hello. Danielle, yeah, well, I tell you, lots of folks here tonight, guys. We are so glad that that you guys have tuned in on this Monday night. It's our new nights that we're having. This is our second show on Monday nights, and we're excited. We're going to be having Fritz Zimmerman in the house probably in about 5 minutes. He's running just a little bit behind. I see Lynn Hobbs in the chat room. Good to see you. Shalom from Northeast Texas. Big John Baptist. Hallelujah. There we go. Good to see you, John. Guys, we're tonight. It depends on if you're following the correct calendar. I'm just kidding. Whatever calendar you follow, tonight is the night that begins Hanukkah for us. So I know some of you celebrate Hanukkah, some of you don't. But we do celebrate Hanukkah. We don't really get into the whole 8 days of miraculous oil or anything like that. We simply look at it as a time of rededication. We would encourage you to take some time, whether you celebrate Hanukkah or not. It's a great 8 days for you to consider yourself. Look at what's going on in your life. And and think about, hey, what are some areas of my life that I need to rededicate? Interesting. Miranda and I last night read the first 8 chapters of First Maccabees, just kind of gearing up, excited for Hanukkah. And there's a lot of detail. There's a lot of detail in of what went on. It's just amazing what Yah did through working with normal people, going up against one of the world's greatest superpowers at the time. In one battle, they were literally outnumbered 6-1, and just amazing what God was able to do. So we can take comfort in some of that. If no matter what we're looking at in our life, Yah can still bring us out. Doesn't matter if there's one with us or not. When we stand with God, all things are possible. Amen. And last time I checked, that word "all" means all. So we just have to kind of look at that kind of stuff. So Jen Kidvit, good to see you. Shalom. Yeah, we're having a little camera trouble tonight. I'm not sure exactly what's going on. I even tried to reposition some of the stuff. So I'm not. I don't know whether it's just strictly a lighting issue, but the StreamYard platform that we use, you're not able to adjust anything in the camera. So other platforms that we've played with before, it'll we have a little bit more control on that. But anyway, that's not a big deal. So hallelujah. Just be able to see my old ugly mug anyway, and go on with stuff. So guys, we're excited about tonight. Hanukkah starts. We're looking forward to what Yah's doing for us, through us, and with us all through this year. Yeah, you like the rosy cheeks? There we go. Yeah. Haha. There we go. We've got some things coming up. I know that we have Mike and Tanya Stevens are going to be joining us. We have a new series that's going to be coming out. That's How I Became Spirit-Filled. So that's kind of going to be a good thing. We're going to be talking about that. We're also going to be talking to Chris and Liz Bailey on how I came to Torah. We've got that in the works. Still have Lee Fuller that's going to be coming on the program talking about a couple stuff. He has a book out that's called the armor, quenching the fiery darts of the enemy, and that's dealing with the the full armor of God and the deliverance ministry. So Kim says she is celebrating the second night of Hanukkah. We're on the first, but praise God, that's great. I'm just so glad. Aleko, good to see you there. Man, I'm telling you what, we've got a lot. We've got a nice full house. I'm showing about 43 in the live. It kind of jumps up and down. Um, it's funny. We get people. We had one guy last time that was trying to be discouraging to us. Oh, you only had like 2 or 3 people watching. Well, that may be where you're at on Facebook or particular group where it's coming out at. But you don't get to see all the numbers and all that kind of stuff like that. But guys, we're not in the book of Numbers. We're in the book of Acts. Hallelujah. We're pretty excited about those things. If you haven't gone back and watched the Take on the World TV's conference videos, we would encourage you guys to get to go there. Common Sense University doesn't give a degree, says that she did not get notified. Throw that out there. So guys, if you will, if you're on YouTube, if you'll go to either Take on the World TV or go to our channel at the Way Remnant and click on subscribe, and then there's a little bell icon. You can click that, and that should give you a notification. Sometimes YouTube doesn't, but that should work. Yeah, Miranda, you're absolutely right. If only one person is watching, that's worth it, guys. Listen, we've had it where plenty of times where we haven't had a lot of live people watching, but you know what? The people that were able to come out and watch were able to be blessed, and it's just an amazing thing what Yah is doing through the internet and through different avenues that we've got. It's a good stuff. So let me see. I wanted to. Do I have it up there? Guys, this is so unprofessional. Hang on one second. Here we go. All right. We don't ever just get to sit and talk, so I thought I would just for a little bit while I'm waiting on. We're waiting on Mr. Fritz to show up. Guys, if you haven't had a chance to, where's the best place? There we go. If you haven't had a chance to check my book out, The Nephilim, A Giant Walk Through History, we encourage you to do that. Some of the stuff that we're going to talk about tonight is in the book too. We've got different. It talks about giants. It talks about little people. It talks about different hybrid beings and things like that. And it's a telling of the story through different his story without any of the gaps that we do through modern teaching and everything like that. So Kelly Joe says I'm subscribed to both, so I was repeatedly getting notified. Helps us to subscribe to both. There we go. Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. So let's see. Common Sense says I've got my solid bell checked, yet YouTube doesn't seem to want me to watch my biblical homesteading prepping channels. There we go. Oh, Kelly Joe said you've got the book, right? Hallelujah. Yeah, get it if you don't have it. There we go. Yeah. Tonight's show is being sponsored by Kelly Joe Maccabee. There we go. I'm just kidding. All right. Hallelujah. Well, guys, listen, you're in for a treat tonight. See, Fritz is back in the green room, ready to go. I'm very excited to be able to bring him back on. Let me go ahead and do that. Let's see. Here we go. Hey, shalom, Fritz. Good to see you.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm so glad that you're going to be here tonight. We're excited about it. We've got a lot of interest in tonight's program, and we're already having a lot of folks pop in, and so we're excited. Tonight, Fritz, we titled this "Giants and Fairies: What They Don't Want You to Know." I would think the biggest question that people have on their minds right now are, Fritz, what are fairies? Are they demons? Are they physical creatures? Are they a mix of both? What's your take, Fritz?
Well, they could be considered a mix of both.
Okay.
Early on in Ireland, there were a people called the Tuatha De Danann.
Yeah.
And they were thought to have come from heaven.
Okay.
And when they died, they were buried in mounds, and then they would become fairies. But then there's another group follows them called the Fomorians, which is interesting because whenever you have Fomoro or Muru, then you're talking about the biblical Amorites, and anyone who's read my books knows that's my theory of who built the geometric earthworks using pi and square root and Pythagorean's theorem of the earthworks in Ohio.
Hey Fritz, let me just show the audience here real quick. Guys, last time, if you haven't watched on the Way Remnant, you can go back and check out. We did a video with Fritz talking about the Nephilim Chronicles of Fallen Angels in the Ohio Valley. And we also talked about his other book, Encyclopedia of Ancient Giants in North America. And tonight, Fritz, we're going to be talking about, we'll still be talking about giants, I'm sure, man, because that's kind of a favorite topic of mine. But we're going to be talking about fairies. And so this is another book that you have. We've got the book ourselves. Man, Fritz, when you write a book, man, look at that. You write a book. There's tons and tons of information in this book. I don't think I've ever seen quite the collection of stories. And a lot, you've got, I think, over 200 illustrations in the book. A lot of things dealing with fairies. And I'm so glad that you took the time. I know people probably, pick on you and rag on you a little bit for even delving into some of these subjects, right? But I appreciate you taking the time, just a little bit, taking the time to write these things down because they're getting harder and harder to come by.
Well, yeah, when I did the Encyclopedia of Ancient Giants, that was 500 pages, and it about killed me. And then it turns out this fairies book was over 500 itself. So
yeah,
it's just so much information to have to deal with and put in categories, and it's a major undertaking. Not only that, of just finding the stories, where in there, I think there's 700 stories of
700,
people
yeah,
that encountered fairies. But I wanted to start the book out putting a link between the fairies and the mound over in Ireland and England.
Yeah.
And then we've had fairy sightings, fairy burials, and all that happens over here as well. So that's that connection that I've made in Nephilim Chronicles and the Encyclopedia, is that the same people that built those mounds came over here and built these mounds. And this is just kind of a periphery of the same religion and fairies and demons and ghosts and everything else that's associated with the burial mound.
So you think that these accounts, because I know I've been looking into the fairies since when we first interviewed you. My wife didn't know about the book on fairies, and she was like, "Oh, we've got to get that." And so we immediately we went out and got the book and been digging into this. And it's there. The stories come from all over, and they seem to, some of them. It's almost like with the flood story, where we have like the really good story that we understand the details are correct and accurate with Genesis 6. But then we also see from different cultures all over the world have different variations of the same story. And we see that with these fairies, like you say, they pop up over in Ireland and Scotland and England and just all over. They do come over here. When I was looking through different photographs of fairy mounds and fairy forts and all these kind of things like that, it just boggles the mind. And you're saying that the people that built the mounds over in Europe, over in the Mesopotamian area, and all these different areas, whether it was Syria or Damascus or up in Bosnia, they built these mounds, and the same people that built them came over here, correct? And built them over here.
Well, it doesn't go that far because you find the mounds and dolmens and menhirs and all the megalithic structures over in the ancient Levant. You find them in Israel. You find them in Jordan.
Yeah.
But kind of right around where the Amorites were, which was kind of on both sides of the Dead Sea. So it is somewhat isolated. It's not this vast expanse
Okay.
where they had dolmens and menhirs and stone mounds and, stone mounds, menhirs, all that. It's all mentioned in the Bible and
Yeah.
the early Bible characters. I mean, it was the megalithic worship of stones that they were practicing. So we do get some insight into the megalithic builders by the Bible. It's just too bad that academia doesn't look at that and gain some insight of what those menhirs meant and what they did with them as far as pouring oil on them and some different things. So just academia again, kind of missing the ball, not
Yeah.
taking all the resources and taking advantage of them to get a greater understanding of just what it was, because to them the megaliths are just a complete mystery.
It's interesting. I see. I used to be. I'm going to tell on myself a little bit, Fritz. I used to be a big time into video gaming. I know a lot of people do that these days, and I used to be really into that. And now that I'm out, I've been out for quite some time. I look back at the lore and everything that they put into these games today. And Fritz, I would say that they dig into more information, looking at these dolems and looking at what they did with them, and these different megalithic structures. And it's interesting to me because it seems like people are wanting to know the history of what went on, what really went on at Stonehenge, what really went on at Baalbek, what really went on, maybe even at the mounds that we have over here in the U.S. with the Serpent Mounds and the ones at Newark, Ohio. So it's interesting. You seem to think that these fairies, this kind of culture came over with whoever was building the mounds, and your philosophy or theory is the Amorites, when they were kind of being pushed out of the Levant. Do you think, I'm going to kind of go back to that first question to clarify again? Do you think these things are demonic, or do you think they're actual physical creatures?
Well, they can manifest as a physical creature,
Hmm.
but they're more like a ghost. Now, there's a site over in Coshocton County, Ohio, and there were several in Tennessee where they found hundreds of these skeletons that were only 2.5 and 3 foot tall. Now, is that a dwarf race that once
Right.
inhabited? Because, these were actual skeletons.
Right.
So that was probably a dwarf race. But when you see a actual fairy, or if you're at Mound State Park, there's been even a park ranger. A park ranger said he saw
Right.
these little beings running around over on the other side of where the mounds are. There's kind of a lower area, and there's a couple of earthworks over there.
Right.
But even a park ranger said that, that he had seen them. But I think when you go into that realm, you're dealing more with like an elemental or a ghost that
Yeah.
is manifested into this fairy creature, because you can never catch one
Right.
and put it in a cage, or get a skeleton or anything like that from them. So it's part of the spirit world. Of course,
Right.
there's all sorts of demonic activity that's involved
Absolutely.
with the
Yeah.
mount as well. What place the fairies have to do with that. It's really hard to tell when we're dealing with a topic like that. But
So it,
we do know that they're there. And I was just on an investigation, and somebody had one of those machines that, if you watch the paranormal shows, they have that machine.
yeah.
You can see SLS, where it kind of puts dots, a dot on your head and your hand. But if there's something there that you can't see, it'll map that out.
Right.
And I've been to 3 sites around Newark, Ohio, where those things showed up. 2 of them were right next to me, and another one was right in front of me. So
Wow.
there's 3 sites where we documented paranormal activity around these mound sites. So
I think it's important for the viewer to understand too. When we're talking about fairies or whatever, we're using the language that's been given to us, and different cultures call things different things. Just like Fritz, if we look back in our history, we you know before the 1800s, we never heard the word dinosaur. It was all taught. It was all dragons, right? Everything was a dragon. Well, now we don't hear anything about dragons, and it's all dinosaurs. And so the dinosaur people say, oh, there were no dragons, but we have clear evidence that there was tons of dragons, right? That we just call them something different now. So whether you call this a fairy or a fae, one of the things that you happened to bring up when you were talking, you said that they could be an elemental, and so that's just a different name of what some people call these things. And so I know we were watching a documentary from a modern day witch, and she was talking about how the elementals and the fae can cause storms. They can do things in their bidding. Of course, in our understanding, this is a witch that's being empowered by the enemy through demonic forces and things like this. But do you see that correlation with maybe bringing that back around? Do you see that correlation with what the Chinese or the Japanese would call elemental spirits? There might be one for the wind, for fire, for water. Is that kind of another aspect of these fairy creatures that we're talking about?
yeah, I think so. One of the ancient names for fairies was genies,
Okay, interesting.
and that is where we get our modern interpretation of a genie.
Okay,
So it was somebody that had magical powers and everything that went along with that.
right.
But the root of that word is actually associated with fairies.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. What is the typical thing that people say that they actually look like? I know I've seen all kinds of hoaxes. I know your friend L.A. Marzulli a couple years ago received a skeleton, and man, they did a lot of research and testing on it. Turned out to be a hoax. But what's kind of the consensus that you've done all these stories and gathering together? What do these things look like? Where are they found typically when you're out in the woods or out and around the I guess the forest or the different mounds and things. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, they're definitely around the mound sites. And then, according to the book of Enoch,
Yeah.
the fairies had allied themselves with Satan,
Okay.
and God cast them down into hell.
Okay.
And for some reason, in mid descent, he changed his mind and he said, "Your spirits will live on the earth forever, and you will become whatever kind of spirit depending on where you land."
Okay.
So if you landed in water, you'd have been a water spirit. If you
Right.
landed in the woods, you would have been a wood spirit,
Okay.
which leads us to Bigfoot. And Bigfoot is nothing more than an apparition. Bigfoot is a ghost. That's why
So
that's why they'll never catch one. That's why they've never caught one before. That's why when people encounter Bigfoot, they'll be in back of them, they'll be in front of them, they'll be
yeah.
on the side of them, because it's a spirit just moving around. So Bigfoot, in some ways, is a fairy, but it's a fairy that has manifested into this woolly ape-like creature.
Interesting, because that does kind of make some sense, Fritz, because a lot of the accounts we subscribe to a channel called Buckeye Bigfoot. There's another one, Cryptids Canada. My wife yells from outside, but and they have a lot of stories about Bigfoot, and it's very interesting that because we have heard several accounts where people have shot these things like point blank and nothing happens. So that would definitely go along with something that they are a spiritual creature able to phase in and out of this dimension, probably at will, with whatever's going on with them. So that's really interesting. So you actually tie Bigfoot in with the fairies and this spiritual creature that we see. From just to clarify, the Book of Enoch talks about the Nephilim when they died. Their spirits, God said, "Look, you're going to roam the earth as unclean spirits." So that's interesting how you. I like that's interesting how you tied that together. Um,
Right. So you had the fairies sentenced to earth,
yeah.
and you also had the giants who were sentenced to earth, which means, well, the burial mounds are portals for the dead.
Hmm.
Portals not only for those buried there, um, but there's other spirits that could probably be going in and out of those portals as well. Some good, some probably bad.
Yeah.
Now, whether they have anything to do with the mound or not, probably not. But just the mound itself is a portal for spirits, and the fairies have always been attracted to the mound because a lot of times the origin of the fairy is the person that was buried in the mound.
Oh wow. Okay.
So the
So
person buried in the mound becomes a fairy,
interesting.
or
Interesting.
it can take on sometimes other aspects.
Okay, so maybe more like a familiar spirit grabbing a hold of what that person was and manifesting in some kind of a way. That's interesting. I've heard accounts, Fritz, where I read a couple accounts in folklore where fairies would steal children, and then they would leave a changeling in place of the child they stole. And I know your book has several of these stories in it. Do you relate these type of stories to what we have as modern day, what we call modern day alien abductions, or even accounts of like black-eyed kids? Do you think there's a tie-in with any of that?
Um, I
What?
don't know about that, but one interesting parallel is Lilith. And in some accounts, it's believed that Lilith mated with Adam, and it wasn't the fallen angels that begot the giant, it was this procreation between Lilith and Adam.
Interesting.
Now, Lilith was known to steal babies.
Right.
So when you sing your child a lullaby, that lullaby, the root word is basically Lilith by. You
Really?
sang this lullaby to ward off Lilith from stealing your child. So
Wow.
there's kind of a parallel between Lilith and then the fairies.
Right.
Both are counted stealing of babies. But when you go to the giants, and then the giants are put into mounds, the mounds become fairies, and they're tied to Lilith. It all kind of goes together.
So you're saying that with these giant burial mounds, uh, we have a giant that dies, and his spirit is still being cursed because of, he's like a hybrid being, a cross, which it's not after anybody's kind. And you're saying this, when he dies, this spirit becomes some kind of a fairy in some manifestation, whether that's a traditional classic fairy, a water elemental, a forest sprite, or even a Bigfoot. Is that kind of what you're saying there?
Uh, no,
Okay.
no. The people buried in the mounds,
Yeah.
some of them will become fairies,
Okay.
and some of them may become demonic. But
Okay.
the fairies that fell in
Yeah.
the book of Enoch, those fairies are kind of separated
Okay.
from the fairies that we find in burial mounds.
Interesting. Okay.
So burial mounds and Bigfoot, no. No
Gotcha.
real,
Okay.
no real correlation
No
there.
correlation there. Okay. All right. What are your thoughts on with modern day people finding fairies? Maybe some things. Do you have some things to share about that happened over here, maybe in the U.S.? Some things, a particular story or a particular thing that you've researched out. What's some of the most unique stories that you've heard?
Well, the fairies that are documented in the encyclopedia, are 100 years old or more. I think the best story is what I alluded to before, and that was the park ranger
Right.
who worked at Mountain State Park, and you know he did an interview, and he's a park ranger, and here he does an interview and says, yeah, I saw these little beings running around
Right.
Mountain State Park, and there was an older woman, an Anderson, and she had remembered seeing them as a child, which they documented in a newspaper article. So over here, there's not as much sightings
Right.
as they had over in Ireland and Scotland and England and Germany. You know, all of the places where I documented fairies is also where there were burial mounds
Interesting.
and hinges.
Interesting.
So the hinge and the burial mound seem to go together. Like one of the
Right.
epicenters of of fairy activity is the Hill of Terra, which is kind of two hinges
Right.
that make up a figure eight. So the earthworks themselves, along with the mounds, are somewhat breeding grounds or places that fairies like to hang out and occupy. But it's an interesting aspect that one of the epicenters is basically a hinge, which we have in England, and then we have multiple hinges here in the Ohio Valley.
Right. Okay. Let me throw you maybe a curveball, Fritz. How about a curveball? What are your thoughts on uh, in I think it's First Kings where we have the story where God is talking with his council. King Ahab is not been doing well with Jezebel, right? And God is saying, what are we going to do? And a lying spirit kind of raises his hand and says, I'll go down and deceive him, and cause him to believe it was a prophecy, a fake prophecy about a war or something like that. Do you think any of these types of creatures? I mean, this was clearly a lying spirit. Do you think any of these types of creatures with fairies or anything have any kind of role like that, even before?
Uh,
Or do you think that's just a different type of spirit being?
well, I mean, it could be. It's
Yeah.
nothing that I've researched, so kind of hard for me to comment on that.
Okay.
Uh, but possibly, I mean, it's kind of going down that same road, so
Yeah. I
possible.
just I just had that thought pop in my head while we were talking. I'm like, I wonder if that because we call things different things. Again, we look at different historical type things, and what we call something in our modern English vernacular may be something totally different than what someone called it back in ancient times. So I didn't know if you had thought about there might be a correlation between that. So very interesting.
Well, when you read the Bible, you have to read between the lines. So,
Yeah.
that's a good example of that, where you read something and then, what else what else could they be talking about
Right.
other than, you know, kind of the blatant of what it's saying. So, yeah, there's a possibility that, they're talking about the spirit world and
Okay. Good. Good.
possibly fairies.
I've got a question here from the audience. A gentleman named Vader Bear. He says he wants to know if you believe there's such thing as good fairies. We understand that there's some that are operating on the side of evil. Do you believe there's such thing as good fairies?
No,
None. Okay.
no, no.
These are all
You see a fairy, that is a demon, and get out.
so they could be
No,
they could
they're
be
not going to
nice.
sprinkle you with dust, and you're going to be 4 inches taller and
Yeah.
good looking or come into wealth.
Right.
No, no, it's strictly the demonic world, something you want to stay away from. But no, the worst thing you could do is when your child loses his tooth, is to
Yeah.
call upon a demon
Yep.
to come and leave it money.
Yep.
I mean, you're actually summoning a demon into your child's room.
Yeah.
And I cannot think of anything more abhorrent or ignorant or stupid than to say that the fairy is going to leave you 50 cents.
Yeah.
Well, it was like 50 cents when I was a kid. I think they're getting like $5 now. But
Yeah.
but no, there are no good fairies. They're demonic,
Yeah.
and that is their origin. And there's Tinkerbell in Disney, but
Right.
that's not really a fairy. That's Tinkerbell.
I could see, Fritz, a lot of people being fooled by fairies or different demonic demons and things like this, because they'll come in and they'll act like they're good. They'll sprinkle you with some nice stuff. They'll do some fun stuff with you until they get you hooked, and then that'll get you where you're believing in a fairy in a good way, just like we have people that are talking to involved in necromancy and talking to the dead and different things like that. So that's really really interesting. Um, Here's another question here from Kelly Joe. She is saying, Jeff, do you think there are other beings besides angels on the divine council? And Kelly, yeah, I would say so. I mean, the word angel uh, just uh, just in itself is just a messenger, and the word angel is not a classification. It's more of a job title. So we see different types of angels. We see um, ones like Gabriel or Gabriel. He was a messenger type of an angel. We see Michael. He's more of a warring type of a prince set up with authority. And we also see some that are on the fallen side of that same classification. We see watchers. We know that 200 of the watchers fell on Mount Hermon, but that doesn't mean that all watchers have fallen. The watchers were sent here to watch us and aid over us. I think today we typically call them like a guardian angel. So again, those are different terms, two different terms, but I think those are terms that we have kind of come up with ourselves to explain maybe things that are going on in the spirit realm. We know there are cherubim. We know that there are seraphim. We know in the scripture there's some creatures around the throne that have four different heads or four different faces on one head. There's another one that has tons and tons of eyes all over it. So very very interesting. Yeah. So I hope that helped with your question there. Fritz, do you have any kind of comment on any of that stuff?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's good angels and there's bad angels.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we have the fallen angels, they begot the giant, according
Yep.
to the biblical literature,
Right.
and form basically the demonic world, where now we have the spiritual warfare between good
Right.
and evil. So maybe that was just something that had to be, because you can't have good if you don't have bad. So maybe it was God's choice that we have evil in the world, because without evil you can't have good,
Yeah. Clearly, if he creates
because
a
it
choice,
means nothing if there's not evil to counterpart that.
yeah, if
So
God sets forward His will and wants you to follow that, then and that's His. He creates that. He creates that path. If you want to, out of your own free will, go against that, well, then the opposite is just as true, and that's definitely where we get in. I think there's even a scripture that God talks about. He created good and He created evil. He created that evil when He gave us a free will and gave us a choice. Something people don't talk about also is angels also have that free will. They were given a choice, or they wouldn't have been able to fall. Fritz, I put down here. I put your illustrated Encyclopedia of Fairies book. You can find that on Amazon. Is there any other place you can find that, or is that the best place to get that?
no, that's the best place to get it.
Very good. Okay.
Buy from Amazon. Know you're going to get it. I mean, I've got it priced at $20 for a 500-page book. So
Gosh, yeah, it's a guys. I can't.
the Encyclopedia of Ancient Giants,
Yeah.
that's 1995 too.
Yep. We've got
And
Fritz
the
here.
other books on giants that are out there with Vieira Dewhurst, who basically copied the book on your left, but he
Right.
had a publisher to sell 1 million of them.
Right.
And I can't get into the legalities of that.
Gotcha.
But in those books, you're going to get like 200 or 300 accounts of giants for. I think Vieira sells his book for $24.95, and mine you get 900 for
Yeah.
$19.95.
Yeah.
And I have hundreds of photos. I have been to all the sites where the giants were found, so you get to see the mound that was, where the giant was located. So I've done the legwork, of course, with the Encyclopedia or the Nephilim Chronicles, Travel Guide to the Ancient Ruins in the Ohio Valley.
Right.
We have 222 mounds in 5 states. That was a result of visiting 700 mound sites to see if they were still there.
Right.
And then photographing 222. That took 10 years.
Gosh, Fritz, I
10 years to do. And that book will never be replicated as long as we live, because mounds are destroyed.
yeah.
So I did that almost it came out in 2010, so I was doing it 10 years before that. So 20 years ago, I was out looking for these mounds. But if you want to see all of the mounds, like in Ohio, there's probably like 40 or 50 mounds that are address restricted. Well, I found all those mounds, photographed them, gave you the history, and gave you directions on how to get to them.
Yeah.
And these aren't little mounds, too. I mean, some of these mounds are some of the largest in Ohio. The largest. Wow. Like 4 mounds that are address restricted would be in the top 5 largest mounds.
Really?
You want to go to Ohio, you want to see the mounds and earthworks, you got to buy the Nephilim Chronicles, the Travel Guide to the Ancient Ruins,
right,
of the Ohio Valley. Or if you just want to take a look, then you can see photos of mounds where I'm the only one that ever photographed them. Right. Here in Indiana, I visited, 400 was here in Indiana because there'd never been an archaeological survey. So a lot of it was Indiana. Archaeologists knew of 30 mounds. I photographed 85 mounds. So that's 65 mounds in the book, just in Indiana, that had never been photographed before.
Really?
So you really get to see what's left of the mounds. And I think there's like 4 or 5 that I found since. So
wow,
242 minus 5, I don't know. So 2% I don't have, but I got most of them.
I'll tell you what, I'm
took me a while.
I put the link also in our chat room so guys could see it. And I'm going to pop it here also on the channel while we're broadcasting. But something that you mentioned the last time, I don't know if we were talking about this on air or off air, but we were talking about the mound here in Moundsville, West Virginia, where I'm at. And they have a whole display now, Fritz, talking about how the giants and all that's just a big hoax. But you said, hey, we've got the pictures from the museum that you had before it became modernized. You said we've got the pictures where you had the giants on display.
Yeah, that was a really big screw up on somebody's part because they put the sign, no, there were no giants here. They have this big display. They don't have that much about the mound, stupid. Yeah. It's a mound museum and they have plates from the 1800s.
Right.
So I was with L.A. Marzulli and we were on our way out and they had a display and they had the actual lithograph because at one time when they found the king's chamber in the lower part,
Yeah.
what the guy did was he dug into that, and that earth is so compacted. That's why that mound probably doesn't look that much different than it did 2,000 years ago.
Right.
And how they compacted the dirt like that is a whole nother story. But anyway, he burrowed in there and he made a museum, and that giant was on display. And you can see it's a giant.
Wow.
And they have it, suspended up on the wall. And there's people kind of walking around it in lithograph. And you can see, it's much larger than what they are. And I can guarantee that got taken off the wall pretty quick. Looks like we're looking at the Creedle Mound. That's a mound in Charleston, West Virginia.
Yeah.
And a large skeleton was buried around that. What's interesting about this picture is because this is very typical of an Amorite grave where you have one single figure,
Uh-huh.
and then you have all these bodies that radiate around him.
Interesting.
And these were probably people that were executed at the time of this guy's burial.
Right.
To serve him in the afterlife. And a lot of times it's around 5, but you can see there it's more like about 20.
Yeah.
Now, on both sides of this burial mound were 2 hinges. And for those who don't know what a hinge is, circular earthwork, interior ditch, single gateway aligned to a solar event. Just like Stonehenge, there's a Stonehenge in the middle, but there's an earthwork that goes around it. It's an hinge.
Right.
Outer earthwork, interior ditch, gateway aligned to the summer solstice sunrise, I believe it is.
Right.
I could be wrong on that. So on each side of this mound were 2 circles that were 666 feet in circumference.
Wow.
Now, there is a professor from MIT who said that the mound builders, meaning the Amorites, were using the exact same measurement as we have as the common foot, which would make sense because the Amorites used a base 12 numerical system.
Interesting.
So when you look at the calendar that has 12 months, those are the Amorites.
Wow.
When you look at a clock, 12 hours, that's the Amorites. So
Interesting.
that's just their influence on us today. But whenever you see the number 12, that's associated with the Amorites. But this MIT professor said that they were using the same. And then what are the odds? Now, 666 to the Amorites was the number for the sun, and 1080 was the number for the moon.
Interesting.
So here we have 2 sun temples, both aligned to one's the winter solstice sunrise,
Right.
and the one on the other side was the summer solstice sunrise.
Okay.
So what are the odds that you have 666, an ancient number for the sun,
Wow.
that measures 666, and there are 2 other hinges in the Ohio Valley, and both of those are 666 feet.
Wow.
So it's not like they were just building these randomly.
Right.
Without any kind of measurement or anything like that, that there was a numerical codex. So you had a number that coincided with what the earthwork was. Did you
It's
want me to comment on that photo?
But I wanted you to be able to talk a little bit about, it, but I'm just fascinated with how you've been able to tie the giants in with the mounds and even with the fairies, Fritz. I'm just really kind of blown away by that. I knew that the fairies, I'd heard of fairy forts, and I saw some of those depictions of those. I saw different interviews with, I've heard about fairy circles in doing my research on this. But you're tying in fairies with the mounds and with giants, and all the way to the Book of Enoch, and even wrapping in the Amorites with that. Tell the audience a little bit about what we're seeing right here on the screen. I'll see if I can blow it up a little bit. I don't know if I can. There we go.
All right. What you're looking at is Newark, Ohio.
Okay.
Do you have a picture of Newark, Ohio? And we'll come back to this.
Yeah, I can. Let me pull it up. Let me see. Let's see. We'll do it live right here on the stream here.
Okay, so I sent you a photo of Newark.
Did you? Okay, let me see.
Yeah, it's in that back. Okay, go back. Go back in another one. There you go. No, back.
Right there?
Forward. Nope, one more. Nope, go forward one more. It was like the next one.
All right, let's see.
No, it's not. There we go. All right, down. Right. Yeah, right there. That's good. That top one.
That one here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Just to show you a little bit about the map, and then we'll get back to the triangle.
Okay.
All right, that triangle is going from the middle of the octagon to the middle of this hinge, and then the highest point of ground, which is 1,600 feet, or it could be, no, I think it was 6,000 feet.
Wow.
6,000 feet away is Geller Hill. And Geller Hill, there's a bunch of mounds up there.
Okay.
But it's the highest point in that whole area. And this just goes to show you that from the circle to the large hinge was the diameter of the circle is 1,050 feet.
Right.
Times 6 puts you where the circle is. 1,050 feet, which I have on another graphic that we can show. That was where that just showed this. 1,050 feet will put you to the square. Now, the interesting thing about the square and the circle is that the circle is 3,700 feet in diameter. And the sides of each one of these sides of this square is 925 feet in diameter. So 920 times 25 times 4 is 3,700 feet. So the sum total of the sides of the square equal the circumference of the circle, and the only way they could have known that is if they knew pi r squared.
Wow.
Well, who knew pi r squared? The Amorites, because the Amorites knew advanced mathematics. Actually, they have found a tablet back when the Amorites controlled Babylon.
Right.
From 2000 BC to 1600 BC of their worksheets on tablets.
Yeah.
They were practicing advanced trigonometry and they said that their advanced trigonometry was more advanced than ours today
My goodness.
with our computers and all we have. They had more advanced mathematics than we have today. So when we see something like this,
Yeah.
oh, just to give you an idea how big this is, this octagon and this circle,
Yeah.
there is a regulation size golf course
And that's
in the
that's
octagon and the circle. If
yeah.
that just gives you any idea how big this thing is.
Wow.
A regulation size golf course, there's no holes on the outside of it, it's all within this enclosure.
Wow.
And then each one of these openings in the octagon represented minimum moon sets, maximum moon sets, maximum moon rise, minimum moon rise.
Wow.
So each one of these openings aligns to a lunar event that takes 18 years. And when you go there, you can barely see the earthwork way in the distance. And you ask yourself, how did they check their work? I mean, how would you know the line here to the south is lining up with the line to the north? How could you check that?
Wow.
And it almost makes you want to believe that there was somebody above them and
Yeah.
directing them. Now, whether that was fallen angels, whether that was aliens, but to build such a massive complex and then having it aligned like that, I don't know how it could be done. I don't know how it could be done from the
Wow.
ground.
Yeah. And I also think that they're reviving and using fallen watcher technology, Fritz. The they were freely given by these watcher class angels.
Well, they had that and they left it for us.
Yeah.
They left us this math of 925 times 4 equals the circumference of the circle.
Right.
Did Native Americans know that?
No way. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
So to say that the Shawnee built this and only could count to 10, and the surveyor that we interviewed there said you would at least have to know trigonometry
Right.
to lay this out. Well, what Native American tribe knew trigonometry? Now, that's no disparaging, anything against Native Americans. I'm just saying it's impossible with the knowledge they had
Yeah.
to have built this earthwork with all of this math involved when we know that there was one people, we knew that they were giants, they knew that they knew math, they know that they knew secrets. It says
Right.
in the Bible that the fallen angels gave the giants the secrets. And they put it on there so we would know 2,000 years later who built it. But because academia are such idiots and they're adhering to this Beringia theory,
Right.
all of this is just thrown out the window.
Wow.
But you can't look at that and tell me that that is a Native American ceremonial earthwork. It just
Yeah.
makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
And you
Well,
always talk about science and empirical evidence and peer review, but
yeah. If you
mainly empirical evidence is like, all right, well, here's all this math. Now, show me a Native American tribe that knew algebra. Let's
well,
just start with algebra.
yeah. If you go
Let
back and
alone let alone trigonometry, or
yeah.
how about geometry? How about basic dividing and multiplying? Let's go down the list to the lowest level, and they didn't have any of that.
Well, we
So it
see. I
could
think
be
Arab. We see Arab scholars inventing and working on spherical trigonometry But Fritz, that was around 1250 A.D. So and
Right. And this
these
is
things are a lot older than that.
3,000 years.
Yeah, yeah. So that's fascinating. That is really fascinating. I've got another slide I'd like to pull up, Fritz. Let me see if I can pop it in here, if that'll work like that. This is something that I found online, and it's kind of a graph. Every time you see a person there, Fritz, it is where people discovered a giant skeleton, and they've mapped all these things out. And listen, I'm up in the Ohio Valley. Man, look at all that up there. That's amazing. We see them. This is just North America. Would you tend to agree with this map that we had a really high concentration of these giants up in the kind of the Ohio Valley area?
Yeah, that would account for about 80% of them.
Wow,
And that map was done by a woman using the Encyclopedia.
interesting. Okay,
So
so
that's not independent research.
right.
Um, but I saw
Okay,
her map. Then I asked her, I wrote her and I said, "Where did you get all these?"
yeah,
And she declined to tell me. And it's just like, well, you've got dots there, and there's only one place in print. So kind of a ripoff. I mean, I don't
oh,
mind. I don't mind making a map showing where all they are. But
right.
anyway, if you want to read the Encyclopedia of Ancient Giants, you're going to read accounts of every one of those little guys
Yeah,
on there. That's 500 pages right there.
right.
But a lot of it is the Ohio Valley. Ohio Valley is 80% where you see all the mounts.
Wow. I tell you what, that book, I'm popping it up there again so that the audience can see. But man, that's just, I'm telling you, you have so much information packed in, and wow, it's just a lot of stuff. Fritz, do you get people really hitting on you, trying to detract what you're doing because you're going against the narrative? The evolutionary model and all that. Do you have people trying to fight you in that category?
Oh, it's not really fighting me. There's different websites on Facebook and stuff like that. So, I get a lot of disparaging things about that. But, it's from archaeologists and, you know, what they say, those who can do, and those who can't teach. So, they're in their university, they're teaching 5 classes a day. What time do they have to go out there and look for mounds and to
Yeah,
do the research that I've done? They
yeah,
don't have that, but yet they call themselves a an expert. They're an expert in ancient history. They're an expert in an 1800s homestead. They're an expert in a 1920s rail depot. You know,
yeah.
they're a what's the saying? They're a jack of all trade and master of none.
There we go. Yeah,
That
yeah.
would probably be a best way to explain an archaeologist.
Wow,
So,
wow. Well, Fritz, I tell you, I have thoroughly enjoyed having you on tonight, talking about all things fairies and giants and mounds, and you just tie it all together. Um, how did you tell the audience a little bit on how you got started with all this? What prompted you to get started, especially maybe on the fairies? I think we talked last time about the giants and the mounds, but what piqued your interest in fairies?
um, the association, and I done research on the Fomorians and the Tuathanannen and that, and some of the origins of the burial mounds over in England. I was, mainly intrigued with Fomorians because it had the root word Muru in it, which is Amorite.
Right.
Amuru was another name that they called the Amorites and the fact that they were giants and they were being buried in these mounds. And then fairies was, somewhat of the folklore that is associated with the mounds. So I just kind of wanted to branch out and just add that one more layer of
Right.
my research and my hypothesis is that the Amorites moved into England. They were there because they were mining the tin. It was the Copper Age. They came here, Isle St. Royal. We have 50,000 tons of copper that we cannot account for. 50
Really?
50,000
Wow.
tons of copper. They don't know where it is. It's not in the mounds, and they've dug into 80% of the mounds.
Right.
50,000 tons of copper. One scientist said it would have taken 10,000 men 1,000 years to dig those mines in Isle St. Royal.
Wow.
10,000 men 1,000 years. That's how long they were digging copper out of those mines. That's what accounts for the 50,000 tons. They have found artifacts in Egypt that have had Lake Superior copper, which is really easy to identify
Okay.
because it's 99% pure with 1% impurity, and that is silver.
Wow.
Opposed to a lot of copper that you mine and you've got to cook it and you got to cook the copper out of the rock. But Isle St. Royal is different than that. It is pure copper.
Wow.
All you have to do is bring it up and send it. You don't have to cook it or anything like that.
And they're missing 50. I want to make sure the audience understands. You didn't say 50 tons, 50,000 tons.
50,000 tons.
Wow.
Like I said, one scientist said 10,000 men, 1,000 years to mine that.
Yeah.
Now, were Native Americans having 10,000 men because they used copper to make rings and earrings occasionally.
Yeah.
So they would mine 50,000 tons of copper. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And when you read my books, I put layer over layer of evidence of like, how can this be? How can you explain this in the confines of Native Americans doing all this? You can't. You can't come up with an answer and tell me that they did this. Just like you can't tell me that they built Newark. You can't say, that this numerology that we find in the mountain happened independently.
Wow.
So it's layers and layers and layers of evidence that hopefully the reader, when you're done, you'll say, yes, in fact, these people were here.
Unequivocally, right.
And we know who they were. Yes.
Wow, that is fascinating. I have a question from the audience for you, Fritz. Out of your studies and reading stories, have there ever been any records of sightings talking about fairies? Where someone rebuked a fairy in the name of Jesus or Yeshua and it left. Have you ever heard of any stories like this?
No.
Guys, we're taxing his brain too. He has over 700 stories that made the cut in the book, not all the ones that he found. So,
no, none in the encyclopedia.
Okay.
But I work with other documentary people, so I have to watch what I divulge.
Okay.
Because I can't divulge their documentary.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I did see a demon rebuked at a, let's just say, archaeological site,
Interesting.
to
Okay.
be as vague as possible.
Very vague, very generic terms there. Okay, Fritz.
Right. And a paranormal team was there, and it was completely documented. If you want to see more on that, I suggest by L.A. Marzulli's In Search of the Nephilim. There's 6 of those, and it appears, and you can see the live action of him doing this in that series. But it is a wonderful series, and if you have any interest in mounds, I suggest you either buy the DVDs, or I think you can go to the LA Marzulli site
.net. Yep.
And stream one for like $3, and it's
Yeah.
well worth the $3 because Marzulli is second to none. All of his videos that he does would be something you would see on network TV, Discovery Channel. The production quality is just top notch, and LA is just a riveting and knowledgeable man to listen to. And then yours truly does his various guest appearances on there.
Yep.
So I'm in there as well, but those are great, and those will expose you to really some, paranormal stuff, some weird stuff that happened at mounds.
Yeah.
We're talking about compacting the mound. Well, at Grave Creek, if you climbed to the top of that thing,
Yeah.
and you walked off the side,
Oh,
it's basically straight down.
when you look at pictures of it online,
Doesn't do it justice.
it doesn't. You really don't get the man. It is. We went up there one time, Fritz, and I had twisted my ankle, and I'm walking up. Going up wasn't bad, but when we got ready to come down, man, I tell you what, that'll help your prayer life, because the steps on that, they're not too great, right? And it is just, it's probably a 60 or a 70 degree angle. It's just straight down, and I don't know how. And again, like you say, it's really compact.
Yeah, you couldn't walk down it; you'd fall. It's just like this,
Right.
and you look over, and it's just like, wow, that is almost like a straight drop. Well, they compacted that earth that tight that thing has not washed away. That it's compacted that hard that, like I said, I don't know that you're looking at anything too much different than what you would have seen 2,000 years ago. Now, what most people don't realize with Grave Creek is it had a moat and a ditch around it at one time.
And all that's gone.
Marietta.
Yeah.
And a lot of the burial mounds over in England also had circles around them.
Yeah. We were able to see the ones in Marietta. We walked all through that and looked at that. They actually have a modern day graveyard around that, back even from the Civil War time. But the one here in Moundsville, there's nothing left. And that's one reason, guys. Listen, if you want to get out and get Fritz's books, man, I highly, highly recommend it, because like he mentioned, there's a lot of these things that are just disappearing because of people building and people clearing land and making farm areas out of it, or incorporated into cities. So I'd highly recommend you guys getting, go look up Fritz Zimmerman on Amazon. We posted a couple links all the way through the program. Buy his books, dig in. I'm telling you what, some really good stuff. I did have a comment by Karen. I want to throw this to you. When we were talking about the copper in the Great Lakes area, she said that she heard that the Great Lakes copper has been made into artifacts that were actually found in the Levant. Have you heard of any of that?
Yes.
Wow.
Egypt and other places in that area, yes, it has been found. And when it is immediately covered up.
Wow.
There's no archaeologist who's going to go like, "Oh, look, I just found some Great Lakes copper over here in Egypt
Right.
or in Israel." So that would mean that
That we
they
had
were
things
mining.
coming from America over to the Levant
Yeah, and they were the ones that were
before it was
mining,
supposed to,
and
right?
everything blows up with them.
Yeah.
Everything blows up, so you're never going to hear it from them about that. But I
Yeah.
want to regress a little bit.
Okay.
We were talking about Grave Creek. You know what the third most haunted place in America is?
Oh, right across the street,
Moundsville Prison.
Milesville Penitentiary.
So when we were talking about portals
Yeah.
for spirits,
Right.
so there you have the biggest mound, and you also have one of the most haunted places in America. And you really can't say that is circumstance.
Yeah. I'm going to try to pull up for people that's never been here because you don't really get an idea. Let me see if I can pull this up, Fritz. I'm going to do this live, guys. Here we go. We've got this is Moundsville, and to let you know, so right here is the Ohio River. This is a big bridge that crosses over Moundsville, and you need to come stay at a Holiday Inn, guys. This is the one I manage right here. There you go. Quick little plug. There we go. Sorry, Fritz. Uh, this, when you zoom in, this is the mound. Guys, can you see this? Okay, this is the mound. Let me close this out. This is the mound right here. And again, there used to be all the way around used to be a big moat, but instead of that moat now, right next door to it, right literally across the street, you have the West Virginia Penitentiary, and it's closed. It's no longer open. And what Fritz is saying, there is a ton of paranormal activity, demonic activity that goes on there. This was the most.
Can you do a street view of that?
Yeah, let me see if I can do that. Let's see. Tested my skills here, Fritz, right on the fly.
There you go. You got it.
So there's the mound, and it doesn't do it justice, guys, of how tall that is.
No, because it looks like you could run right up it.
And this is right across the street from it, guys. This is the West Virginia Penitentiary.
Yeah, it's no place to be.
Yep. This was the most violent prison in U.S. history. I used to think it was Alcatraz, but there were more murders and more horrible things that went on here. And this was open all the way up to 1994. Very interesting stuff. So, do you think there's a correlation there, Fritz, with all the bad stuff that would go on here? I mean, it's a prison. Bad things are going to happen in a prison anyway. But do you think maybe even more of it was influenced because of this mound right over here and being a portal?
Oh, absolutely. I would like to go to that mound at night sometimes.
Huh?
Because I've heard numerous reports of shadow people walking around the mound and just walking around those grounds.
Wow.
At night. And of course, shadow people are demons.
Right.
So, yeah, there's a heavy demonic influence. And to think that didn't bleed into this penitentiary and to make it the third most haunted place in America today.
Yeah.
Just shows you, well, in some ways it ties everything together. Like, well, we have mounds, and well, what's in the mounds? Well, there's spirits, there's demons, there's fairies.
Right.
Fairies are demons. And now here we have a mound, we have this place together, and it basically is documented in the fact that it's the most haunted, but like you said, also being the most violent, you
Yeah.
know? So what kind of demonic possession was
Right.
happening with some of these men for them to kill people and maim
Yeah.
people and do all this? So is it, evidence that you could probably take to court? No.
Right.
But again, it's just another little layer that you lay down, and that kind of tells the story.
Yeah.
So it's not one story, it's 50 stories, 60 stories, 60 different things layered one on top of the other,
Right.
where the evidence becomes somewhat overwhelming.
Guys, just to kind of give you a perspective, this mound here in Moundsville, this is 60 feet tall. Doesn't look like it right here, does it, Fritz? But it's 60.
No,
62
yeah,
feet.
it looks like you just run right up it, and you couldn't.
Yeah, literally, it's like this. I mean, you're just yeah, it would be rough. It would be rough. So there we go. So that's some good stuff, guys. Appreciate all the questions. Making sure we have see if we have any more questions before we let Fritz have the final word. But this has been a good program tonight, Fritz. I really, really, really. Oh gosh, Karen, you gotta love this. She says there is a mound of circumstantial evidence. I love it. That's like a good pun to end up the show with. There he goes. Fritz, do you got anything you'd like to add before we sign off for tonight?
Well, of course, buy the encyclopedia. Buy both encyclopedias.
Yeah.
1,000 pages for $40 isn't bad.
Yeah.
And
Fritz, I got these two here. Let me put them there.
I wrote another book. It's a little off topic.
Okay.
But I was interested in it because, a lot of Native Americans right now. Now we know the Dakota Sioux were the Hopewell.
Right. Interesting.
So they were mound builders. All right. Now they were also the tallest tribe in North America because they were mixing with these Amorites. But I wanted to know more about the death rituals of Native Americans to see if I could tie that. Yeah, so here's the Native American Book of the Dead. And then I sent you a picture on Messenger of it as well.
Okay. Oh, okay. Let me pull that up. I was pulling this up so I could share the link with everybody.
Well, you can see it gets 4.5 reviews.
Yeah.
That's always good. And I have 67 tribes in there. And their death rituals are from firsthand accounts of what happened when people died. And a lot of crazy stories of people would cut their fingers off, maim themselves, cut themselves. People would be sacrificed, but nowhere. There we go. Native American Book of the Dead. That is one interesting read right there.
Okay.
And it ties together because it seems like all I write about is dead people. So, but anyway, 67 tribes, actual firsthand accounts of what happened when somebody died and the fear of ghosts.
Right.
Sometimes a person's house would be burned down right after they died, just so the ghosts wouldn't want to return there.
Wow.
So lots of fascinating stories. 67 tribes, all the way up from Maine, all the way to Washington and everywhere in between. So it's an interesting read. But afterwards, you'll realize it's like, except for the Sioux, none of these other Native American tribes were mound builders.
Really?
Well, with the exception of like the Choctaw,
Right.
and now we're talking the Mississippian period, which starts about 800 AD. So we're looking at 1500 years after, the giants. But the Choctaw were building platform mounds. The Cherokee were building platform mounds. The Natchez Indians were building platform
Yeah.
mounds. There's a really good story in there about the Natchez, because when the Sun King would die, all around the kingdom, you had to extinguish your fires.
Really?
No fire was allowed. They all had to be extinguished. And then they would execute 8 people that would be buried with the king. And then when they had the new king, a new fire was built. And it was from that fire to rekindle all the fires in the kingdom.
Wow. Interesting.
But it all had to come from that platform mound, from that
Wow.
new king. All fire came from that king, while the other king, all of his was extinguished.
Wow.
So some fascinating stories in there. Some
Well,
real fascinating stories.
I definitely wouldn't mind having you back, Fritz, to talk about that one night. I'm already having questions pop in my head to ask you about that. That sounds really, really good. That sounds really good. Yeah, I'm already. Gosh, I'm gonna have to go out and buy the book, Fritz. There you go.
You and everybody else, right?
Absolutely, Fritz. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this has
Well,
been.
I try to make my books interesting and fun to read. Now, when you have 70 accounts of different Indians, it's not like a novel where you just can't put it down. You might
Yeah.
read like 5 or 6 tribes and set it
Sure.
down. You read 6 or 7, 8, 9, 10 tribes, maybe 20. But, and it's just a great piece of of your library, just to
Right.
have this knowledge, if it would ever come up about death ceremony of the Choctaw or the Natchez or
Right.
any number of 67 tribes, which Choctaw and Natchez seems to be what's popping in my head right now.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's an interesting read.
Yeah.
What they went through, some of it's pretty gory, but
Right.
But the gory book I wrote, but is not on. I didn't send you this Captured and Tortured Trilogy of Terror,
Okay.
and that is, I don't know how many stories. People that were captured by Indians, and then firsthand account of torture and what they would do to people, and it is an absolute horror story
My goodness.
of what they would do to a person.
Wow. This is Captured and Tortured Trilogy of Terror.
Oh,
So, yeah,
56 firsthand accounts.
very interesting.
Well, not only that, it's almost a religious book in some aspects, because these people would be captured and treated in the most inhumane ways,
Yeah.
not fed, not given blankets,
Yeah.
and their faith in God that they would get through this was so strong that they survived it. But without that faith, I don't think they would have.
Right.
And people were so much more religious back then. It's a real insight
Yeah.
into their mindset of that God would deliver them from this, as bad as it seemed.
Right.
And so it's another good book, but it has a lot of really gory torture stories in it.
Wow. Well, I know my wife, her family, Fritz. If you go back far enough, I forget which side, if it's her mom or dad's side. But one of her great grandparents or something like that was, uh, they were their family was killed by an Indian tribe, and they actually, the Shawnee, and they took the kids captive and raised them as their own because they had red hair. They there was something special about them having red hair. I think they tied that in with the Giants. So, well, we would love to have you back and talk about all this stuff.
All right, we'll do that.
So that sounds really good. Fritz, we appreciate you being on tonight. If you'll hold on just a minute, I'm going to close the program out. We'll chat here right after the program ends. So I'm going to tell you bye. I really appreciate you coming on the Way Remnant tonight, man. We have enjoyed you. Guys, if you've enjoyed this program, go out and hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and go buy some books that Fritz has put out. I'm telling you what, anything that you're interested, he's got like a plethora of pages written on it.
Well, thank you.
All right. All right, Fritz, hang on one second. I'll be right back with you, okay?
All right.
All right. Oh, guys, listen, what a great program tonight. I am so blessed. I tell you what, this was great. Answered some questions that I had about fairies, and I love the way that Fritz was able to tie in not only the fairies and the giants, and even Bigfoot, and different things like this, different elemental type spirits, all these things, and even with the Amorites and higher functioning math and different things. So I am just really blown away by all the stuff that we've encountered tonight. We're going to have Fritz come back on and talk about these two books on Indians, and the death rituals, and also this captured and tortured. Fascinating stuff, guys. So we appreciate Fritz from being on tonight. Guys, look forward. We're going to be having some more programs. I hope that each one of you are enjoying Hanukkah. If you enjoy Hanukkah, enjoy that, and we'll look forward to visiting with you again. We do have a bunch of more interviews and also some teachings coming up too, guys. So be watching for us. We are so glad that you're here. We thank you for being here. Until then, we'll see you later. Shalom, shalom, everybody.